This week brought a stunning surprise, what may be announced as one of the greatest discoveries of our time. Scientists at NASA revealed that they've found the strongest evidence yet of life in Martian soil. Traces that they can't properly explain with any process other than biology. So what does this mean? Did we finally detect life beyond Earth? Or is this another case where our excitement will fade away? Let's find out. First, let's talk about where this discovery was made. On July 30th, 2020, NASA launched the Perseverance rover to Mars. On February 18th, 2021, it landed on a carefully chosen site, the Jezero Crater. Here's how the crater looks on Mars. On this map, the western path represents the route Perseverance has traveled. If we highlight the region in a depth map, you can clearly see a delta structure, the same kind you'd see on Earth where a river empties into a lake. Imagine the Wax Lake Delta in the US. It's extraordinary, right? This ancient riverbed and crater lake tell us something amazing. Geological and mineral data suggest that around 3.5 billion years ago, Jezero wasn't just a crater, it was a lake, filled with liquid water and surrounded by rivers. And if Mars once supported life, this watery crater would have been one of the best places to find it. That's why Perseverance was sent there, to search for signs that Mars once hosted living organisms. And ever since landing, it's been collecting samples. So far, Perseverance has gathered 33 samples. Among them, sample number 22 stands out. It's called Sapphire Canyon, taken from an area near the delta's edge, inside what researchers call the Bright Angel Formation. At first glance, it looks like just another rock. You can even see the drill hole where Perseverance extracted it. But this sample, collected in July 2024, is a mudstone core, a perfect time capsule for ancient Martian environments. Geologists study cores like these the same way we drill into ancient riverbeds on Earth, to reconstruct what conditions were like billions of years ago. And the analysis of this very sample was just published in Nature, one of the world's most prestigious journals. It's the findings from that paper that sparked the headlines claiming signs of life found on Mars. So, what did they discover? At first sight, these rocks seem ordinary. But under closer inspection, scientists found something intriguing. Tiny nodules, smaller than a millimeter, scattered throughout. Some are arranged in patterns called reaction fronts, boundaries formed by chemical reactions progressing at different speeds. Spectroscopic analysis showed these patterns had a distinctive peak in what's called the G-band, a signal pointing to aromatic carbon. And aromatic carbon is often associated with organic molecules. That's a big deal, because organic carbon is usually linked to life. Of course, it can also form through non-living processes. But the way these molecules appear here suggests something more. The texture and composition of the sample resemble what happens in low-temperature redox reactions, chemical processes where certain elements gain or lose electrons. On Earth, such redox reactions are common in microbial metabolism. Even more compelling, the mineral composition showed high levels of vivianite, a hydrated iron phosphate, and iron sulfides. Vivianite in particular tends to form near decaying organic matter. And here's the kicker. These organic materials, vivianite and sulfides, weren't randomly scattered. They were clustered together in the same microscopic zones. On Earth, this kind of pattern usually happens when microbial communities interact with sediments as they turn into rock. In other words, the spatial arrangement itself looks biological. Because of this, researchers believe they've detected biosignatures, chemical fingerprints of ancient microbial life. and that's why this made headlines around the world. If you're familiar with this topic, you might be asking, couldn't non-biological, abiotic chemistry make these same signals? Excellent question. What makes the new paper so good is that it tackles exactly this. Science has a habit that should be taught in every school, but rarely is. When you see a bold claim, you start by assuming the opposite. That's the null hypothesis. If someone says, "These patterns were made by microbes," the working position becomes, "They weren't made by microbes." Then you try as hard as possible to refute that default stance. If you can refute it, your original claim gains credibility. If you can't, you don't fool yourself. Think of all the wild claims you hear. Miracle foods curing cancer, secret devices causing earthquakes, or sensational interpretations of everyday physics. How do you separate truth from noise? You begin with the null. The claim is not true. And then you look for solid evidence that forces you to abandon that position. The classic example. Suppose someone claims lemons cure cancer. We don't accept or reject it on gut feeling. We assume the null. Lemons don't cure cancer, and then design studies that could prove us wrong. If high-quality trials show a real benefit beyond placebo and standard care, we'd reject the null. If not, we keep the null and move on. This discipline prevents harm, self-deception, and wasted time. Back to Mars. The Nature paper doesn't start with, "We found life." It starts with the null. These findings do not indicate life. The authors then try to explain every observed feature, aromatic carbon, reaction fronts, the clustering of organics with vivianite and sulfides, using known Martian geology and chemistry that don't involve biology. Here's the punchline. Under the conditions we know exist on Mars, and with processes we can actually test using Perseverance's instruments, no abiotic scenario they examined reproduces the full pattern seen in the Sapphire Canyon core. The spatial collocation, mineral phases, and redox textures all line up naturally once you include microbial processes in the model. Without biology, the puzzle pieces don't quite fit. That's why scientists are excited, not because they've proved ancient Martians existed, but because the simplest coherent explanation among those they could test involves life. This is still not a smoking gun. The discovery doesn't present a fossil microbe or a cell wall under a microscope. It's not an unequivocal, "Yes, life was here." Rather, it's a strong case built by eliminating alternatives with the tools on board. There are two big caveats. 1. Unknown unknowns. Mars has had 4 billion years for odd chemistry to happen under conditions we may not fully understand. There might be an abiotic pathway we haven't imagined yet that mimics these biosignatures. 2. Instrument limits. Perseverance is powerful, but it's not a full Earth lab. To really nail this, we'd want Mars sample return. Bring these cores to Earth and throw the entire arsenal of modern instruments at them. With deeper analyses, we might confirm the biological interpretation, or discover a clever non-biological pathway and be disappointed. In other words, we're at the most promising evidence so far stage, not the case closed stage. Media love certainty. They've been doing it since the 1800s, when telescopic illusions on Mars were hyped into tales of engineered canals and intelligent builders. Today, the urge is the same. Life found makes a splash, but science advances by careful accumulation. Dozens of modest, rigorous results that, together, change the picture. That's what we're seeing now. A remarkable piece added to a long, growing chain of evidence that Mars once had water, energy gradients, and the chemistry that life favors. If you stack the last 50 years of findings, it's getting harder to see how all roads don't at least pass through biology. Still, discipline matters. Follow the evidence. Don't outrun it. So, did we find life on Mars? The honest answer? Maybe. And this is the best maybe we've had yet. The data fit a biological story better than any tested non-biological one, but we need returned samples and deeper analysis to be sure. That's how we avoid fooling ourselves, and how we inch toward real answers. All of this highlights a principle that's more important than the Mars result itself. Science's greatest strength is its ability to avoid self-deception. Humans are naturally biased. We want to believe, we jump to conclusions, we see patterns where none exist. The scientific method forces us to slow down, test assumptions, and follow the evidence, even if it points somewhere disappointing. That's why the null hypothesis matters so much. It's why we design experiments, demand replication, and constantly try to break our own ideas. If we don't, we're just telling ourselves stories. So where do we stand? Right now, Mars definitely once had liquid water in large amounts. It had energy gradients, redox chemistry that microbes on Earth exploit for metabolism. It has preserved minerals and organics in ways that look suspiciously biological. Combine those, and you get a planet that was at least habitable billions of years ago. Whether it was actually inhabited is the million-dollar question. And that's what this new paper nudges us closer to. Maybe, just maybe, the answer is yes. It's worth repeating. This isn't a fossilized bacterium under a microscope. No Martian cell walls, no DNA. Just patterns and chemistry that fit life better than they fit the alternatives we've tested. There are still other possibilities, chemical pathways we haven't considered, environmental conditions unique to Mars, or simply analytical gaps in Perseverance's instruments. Until we have samples back on Earth, every conclusion is provisional. NASA's Mars Sample Return mission aims to bring cores like Sapphire Canyon back to Earth. Here, in world-class labs, we could probe them with far more sensitive instruments, isotopic ratios, nanometer-scale imaging, molecular-level chemistry. But politics and budgets get in the way. Right now, NASA's funding is under pressure. If Congress doesn't allocate the money, the mission may be delayed for years, possibly decades. That's frustrating, because the science is ready. The question is whether society has the will to prioritize it. This isn't the first time Mars has been hyped. Back in 1877, astronomer Giovanni Schiaparelli observed dark streaks on Mars through his telescope. He called them canali, Italian for channels. But when translated into English, people read it as canals, implying artificial construction. The idea of Martian engineers digging waterways captured the imagination. Figures like Percival Lowell spent years mapping these supposed canals, convinced they proved intelligent life. Today, we know it was an optical illusion, amplified by wishful thinking and poor translation. The lesson? Excitement is fine, but rushing ahead of the evidence leads to myths, not knowledge. This latest study is not the discovery of little green men, or even microfossils. What it is the strongest indication yet that Mars's rocks may carry the chemical fingerprints of ancient microbes. It's a reminder that life leaves marks, even at microscopic scales, and that careful science can detect those marks across millions of kilometers. It also shows us how discovery really works, not in giant leaps of absolute proof, but in careful steps that build a cumulative case. So, has life been found on Mars? Not conclusively. But for the first time, the evidence is tipping further toward maybe yes than probably not. The road ahead is patience. Keep testing. Keep doubting. Keep collecting data. Someday, maybe soon, we'll have samples in Earth labs and answers we can trust. Until then, what we've learned from this study is not only about Mars, but about ourselves, about how science, done carefully, is the best tool we have to separate truth from illusion. Because in the end, the most important rule is simple. Don't fool yourself.